Hello dear 11th graders. Welcome to Education Online Digital Library. My name is Dr. Munca-Aftenev and I'm going to be your virtual teacher today. Our topic is the amazing world of art. And at the beginning I prepared a short quiz for you. I hope you're ready. The purpose of this quiz is to find out how art savvy you are. And if you're not familiar with the word savvy, it means well-informed and perceptive. For example, savvy Washington insiders. It also means knowledgeable or proficient in something. And sometimes it goes in combinations such as tech-savvy, media-savvy. So, let's get started. Can you tell me which museum in 2019 received over 9.6 million visitors? That's 3 times the population of Republic of Moldova, by the way, making it the most visited museum in the world. And to help you out a bit, I placed a few images on the slide that you can see on your screen right now. So the first one is the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, Russia. By the way, I visited the museum last year and it's definitely a wonderful, amazing experience. I strongly recommend it. And then, of course, we can see the Louvre, which is one of the most widely known museums in the world. After that, we have the Museum of Modern History, and I'm sure you have watched several movies that make this museum very famous. And last but not least are the museums from Vatican, and if you are into Renaissance and classical art, then that's a place to visit. So, have you made up your mind? Which museum received 9.6 million visitors in 2019? Of course, Louvre, which is the most visited museum in the world. And so far, no other museum in the world managed to beat the record. So, of course, one of the most famous paintings in the world is also located in Louvre, and I'm talking about Mona Lisa. But my next question is related to a statue. What is the largest hammered copper statue in the world? I'm sure you know the word hammered. It comes from the name of the tool, hammer, that you use to hit a nail, for example. And then we have the word copper. And if you don't remember this word, if you go to Google Images and if you type in copper, you will see a lot of images of pipes, for example. Because copper is a chemical element which comes from the Latin cuprum, which is a soft, malleable, and ductile metal with very high thermal and electrical conductivity. That's why pipes are made and wires are made from copper. So let's go back to our question. What is the largest hammered copper statue in the world? Do you know the answer? I'm sure you do. We're talking about the Statue of Liberty, okay, which was a gift from the people of France to the people of the United States. All right, let's move on to the next question. Who is the world's most valued painter who sold only one painting in his entire life? And by the way, it was to his brother who owned an art gallery. So who is the world's most valued painter who sold only one painting in his entire life? And that was to his brother. Do you have any ideas, any clues, any very famous painters you know? And the answer is Vincent van Gogh. That's a pity that his amazing art was not appreciated at the time of his life. But right now, I'm sure everyone knows about this amazing artist. You ready for the next question? We talked about Mona Lisa. We talked about the Louvre. And now, my question for you is, what is the second most famous painting in the world after Mona Lisa? To help you out, I placed a few pictures on the slide that you can see on your screen right now. So next to Mona Lisa, you can see a very famous Kiss, one of my favorite paintings, by the way. And then you can see the Starry Night. I'm sure you have seen the image on many posters and books and a lot of materials that are printed every year. And the last is the girl with the pearl earring. By the way, there is a movie that is trying to guess the mystery behind this amazing painting. Gustav Klimt, the one who painted, by the way, the Kiss, has managed to sell his paintings for a lot of money. He's very famous around the world. So, what is the second most famous painting in the world? The Kiss, the Starry Night, or the girl with the pearl earring? And the correct answer is The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh. It's an amazing painting that can create a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions in those who admire it. Now, speaking of paintings and speaking of how much money they are worth, my next question for you is, what is the most expensive painting ever sold? To help you out, or maybe to make it even more challenging, I placed a few famous paintings that are in the top 10 of most expensive paintings ever sold. You can see modern art, you can see classical art, you can see a few images that I'm sure you have seen before, so they are familiar to you, even though you might not know their name. You know the Scream, which is a masterpiece of modern art, and then you see the portrait, and then you see the Renaissance painting. So which one do you think is the most expensive? And the correct answer is Salvator Mundi by Leonardo da Vinci. And when it was sold, the buyer paid $450 million, okay, which is an amazing sum of money if you ask me, but probably that painting was worth it. What do you think? How do you feel when you watch this painting? Well, I'm sure the real painting is much more impressive than the picture we see on the slide. Let's move on to the next question. So Google Arts and Culture teamed up with over 2,500 museums and galleries around the world to bring anyone and everyone virtual tours and online exhibits. And my question for you is, what is a virtual tour? I'm sure you're very much into virtual reality because this is a buzzword in the 21st century, and I think it's an amazing idea that Google managed to take advantage of this trend and team up of museums and galleries around the world to help us visit them virtually if we cannot afford to do it in person and travel to those amazing places. So a virtual tour, and you can see a screenshot on your screen, is a sequence of panoramic images that are stitched or linked or glued together to create a virtual experience of any location. The viewer is able to experience what it is like to be somewhere they are actually not. This virtual experience could be viewed through the desktops, computer, laptops, tablets, and even mobile devices. Some virtual tours also include sound effects, music or narration describing products or points of interest. And this is probably the part that I enjoy the most. And many offer buttons that can be clicked on by users who want to take a still image of a particular portion of the tour. This means that when you are guided around the museum, virtually speaking, and if there is a place you're really interested in, you can click on it and then that can be zoomed in, for example, or that can be paused, and so you can observe the details and you can spend more time on that particular exhibit. So this is what a virtual tour is, and now you can explain to your friends in English what the way it works and what is exciting about a tour. So speaking of new vocabulary, stitched means fastened or joined, connected or linked. So if we go back to the text, a virtual tour is made up of sequences of panoramic images that are stitched together, which means linked, joined, connected. Have never visited the Louvre or the Hermitage or the Museum of Natural History? Modern technology offers an exciting solution worth exploring. Google Arts and Culture teamed up with over 2,500 museums and galleries around the world to bring anyone and everyone virtual tours and online exhibits of some of the most famous museums around the world. Now, we can go to the museum and never have to leave our couch. Google Arts and Culture's collection include the British Museum in London, which is definitely in my top. I would love to visit it one day. The Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. Amsterdam is a beautiful European city. The Guggenheim in New York City. I visited Guggenheim many years ago and I was impressed by the architecture of the building. Strongly recommend it to you. In New York City, and literally hundreds of more places where you can gain knowledge about art, history, and science. This collection is especially good for students who are looking for ways to stay on top of their studies and cannot afford or don't have time for traveling. So this is a screenshot from the Guggenheim Museum that I was lucky to visit. I was very fortunate to visit when I was an exchange student. And so what I love about this building is that it goes in circles, so you cannot skip the exhibits. You have to actually go around and you go up, right? It's kind of without stairs, and you have to watch and you have to see and observe every single piece of art, sculpture, and paintings that are located in the museum. And I think that's a tremendous idea. Now, let's talk about the key vocabulary. So, get the picture. Now, if I'm asking you, did you get the picture? I'm asking you if you understood what I meant. So, to understand the situation without the need for more explanation. For example, don't say anything more, I get the picture. Or, I got the picture without listening to the whole story. So, do you get the picture? Black canvas. When you use this expression, you refer to something with no content that can be easily filled with completely new things. And I'm going to give you an example so that you can understand the way this expression can be used better. Children are blank canvas. It's easy to make them believe whatever you want. Art is long and life is short. This is a beautiful proverb. And even though you might be too young to understand the meaning of this proverb, I'm sure that in time it will have more meaning to you. A phrase that emphasizes the permanence of art and the fleeting nature of human life. Fleeting, speaking of fleeting, means passing quickly, ephemeral, rapid and transient, right? Something that goes without stopping, fleeting. So time in general is fleeting. So take advantage of every moment and enjoy every day of your life. Try to make the best out of it because time flies quickly. Another proverb you are familiar with. Be no oil painting. So this expression refers to someone who is not attractive. For example, she's no oil painting, but she's got an attractive personality. So oil painting. Down to fine art. It means learned, mastered, or understood perfectly to the point of requiring little or no focus to do, recall, or accomplish. To help you understand this expression better, I selected an example for you. Make sure you practice these equations until you have them down to fine art, which means until you understand very well how they work. Another example, I always get my routine down to fine art, so there won't be any room for error during the performance, right? So you get the routine down to fine art, which means you practice and you exercise until you believe the result is perfect, okay? Down to a fine art. Another interesting expression that I would like you to learn, paint something with a broad brush. Describe something in general terms without mentioning specific details and without paying attention to individual variations, right? The broad brush. Let's see an example. When asked about his policy to reform the educational system, the president painted his plan with a broad brush, which means he presented it in a very wide, broadened way without getting into small details, right? So I'm sure you'll remember this one because it's easy to memorize. Paint something with a broad brush. And one more expression that I really love, poetry in motion. Something that is graceful and beautiful to observe. For example, the girl was like poetry in motion when she was dancing, right? Very beautiful. Poetry in motion. So now it's time to learn some really interesting expressions that refer to art. Get the picture to understand the situation without the need for more explanation. For example, don't say anything more. I get the picture. Or I got the picture without listening to the whole story. Do you get the picture? Black canvas. When we use black canvas, we refer to something with no content that can be easily filled with completely new things. For example, children are black canvas. It's easy to make them believe whatever you want. Art is long and life is short. I know you were too young to understand the meaning of this beautiful phrase or proverb, but I'm sure in time you will appreciate its value. So it refers to a phrase that emphasizes the permanence of art and the fleeting nature of human life. And if you don't recall what fleeting means, it means passing quickly, ephemeral, rapid, and transient. So time flies away. Time is fleeting. Be no oil painting is the expression that refers to somebody who is not very attractive. For example, she's no oil painting, but she's got an attractive personality. Down to a fine art. It means learned, mastered, or understood perfectly to the point of requiring little or no focus to do, recall, or accomplish. For example, make sure you practice these equations until you have them down to a fine art, which means until you know how they work perfectly. I always get my routine down to fine art, so there won't be any room for error during that performance. Again, another expression to help you understand how to talk about making things perfect. Paint something with a broad brush. It means describing something in general terms without mentioning specific details and without paying attention to individual variations. For example, when asked about his policy to reform the educational system, the president painted his plan with a broad brush, which means he didn't go into very specific details. Poetry in motion. The girl was like poetry in motion when she was dancing. So, it means something that is graceful and beautiful to observe. Beautiful, isn't it? Poetry in motion. And now, I would like to talk about some pieces of art that are famous around the world, and I'm interested in your opinion. So, how do you feel about art in general? Do you have any paintings or any sculptures or any architectural pieces of art that you are interested in? Do you think art in general is worth that much money? And when you talk about the art that you like, prefer, or dislike, you can use the following expressions. In my opinion, in my experience, speaking for myself, personally, I strongly believe that, I really feel that, if you ask me. And in general, you can use this expression. Some people say, most people think, everybody knows, according to scientists, the thing is that, or the point is that. And if you ask for an opinion, just like I did a few minutes ago, you can use the following expressions. What's your idea on what do you think about it? How do you agree with that? Do you agree with that? Is that what you think? Have you got an opinion about it? How do you feel about it? Do you have anything to say about it? And you, what do you think? Is that right? For example, I selected a few very interesting pieces of art that are very famous around the world, and I'm interested in your opinion. How do you feel about them? For example, the Venus of Willendorf is an example of what beauty was at that time, and I intentionally placed it next to the bust of Nefertiti. So, which one do you prefer? The first one or the second one? Laocoon and his Sons is an amazing sculpture, and it definitely shows the entire complexity of the situation. I'm going to tell you the story in a minute. And then we have Nike of Samothrace. One of my favorites is The Thinker by Rodin, and initially it was called The Poet, and I really like the pose, and again it's one of the most famous sculptures in the world. David by Michelangelo, I'm sure you've seen it many times. And now we're going to move on to modern art. We have The Balloon Dog, Mama by Louise Bourgeois, and Cloud Gate by Anish Kapoor. How do you feel about these paintings and sculptures? Are you more into classical art or are you more into modern art? Let's find out a few interesting things about them. And now I'm going to give you more details on Laocoon and his Sons, an amazing sculpture. Since its 16th century excavation, Laocoon and his Sons has attracted archaeologists and art lovers alike. This Hellenic sculpture depicts three marble figures in an action-packed scene based on an ancient Greek myth. According to legend, Laocoon was a priest from Troy who, along with his two sons, was attacked by sea serpents sent by a god. Although the original sculpture, unfortunately, remains a mystery, the work is lauded for its technical mastery and emotional impact. And if you're not familiar with the word lauded, to laud means to praise. And laud can also be used as a noun, which means extraordinary praise. An amazing sculpture that shows the entire tragic situation that you would definitely admire should you one day see the original. Now, let's move on to modern art. And on your screen, you can see the Balloon Dog. Love him or hate him, Jeff Koons is responsible for some of the most memorable art of the 20th century. In 2013, his balloon dog, made of stainless steel with a transparent coating, set a record for a living artist when it sold for $58.4 million in 2013. Yes, you got that right, $58.4 million. Part of a series that transforms a playful child's play favor into a monumental sculpture, Kunz also created other versions in blue, magenta, red, and yellow. How do you feel about this modern art? Do you think it's worth $58.4 million? Coating refers to a layer of a substance spread over a surface, as for protection or decoration, a covering layer. I really like this shiny covering layer, don't you? And now, in the end, one of my favorite modern art, Cloud Gate, created by the controversial artist Anish Kapoor, located in Chicago's Millennium Park, which was inspired by liquid mercury. Isn't that exciting? Kapoor won the commission after submitting to a design contest. And though the design was controversial, many believe the seamless design was impossible to construct and upkeep. It's now become a beloved part of the city, and I think it looks really cool, if you know what I mean. So controversial means debatable or polemic, under discussion, open to question. And then to upkeep. So many people believe it's difficult to upkeep this monument, which means something that needs to be maintained in good working order. Upkeep. All right. And in the end, I would like to go through the words that might be challenging for you in terms of pronunciation. So repeat with me. Hammered. Hammered. Statue of Liberty is the largest hammered copper statue. Savvy. Savvy. Remember the quiz? How art savvy are you? How knowledgeable are you? Malleable. Malleable when describing copper. Ductile. Ductile. Also about copper. Conductivity. Conductivity. Exhibit. Many of my students make a mistake when they pronounce this word. Exhibit. Exhibit. Knowledge. Again, one word that is tricky. Knowledge. Excavation. Archaeologist. Archaeologist. Archaeology. So we have the k sound. Archaeology. Sculpture. Marble. Priest. Lauded, which means praised. Coating, which means layer, covering layer. Controversial. Mercury. Seamless. And to upkeep. So, dear 11th graders, I hope you enjoyed our video lesson. Have a great day and see you next time in the Education Online Digital Library.